home, contracts the coronavirus, that everyone should stay home.
Vice President Mike Pence right there encouraging Americans to follow federal guidelines on the coronavirus, saying there will be tens of thousands of tests in the next few days and weeks.
And it is time for our headliner this morning, Kellyanne Conway, counselor to the president. And we should point out that she sits in on some of those task force meetings, but is not on the task force. Kellyanne, good morning to you and welcome.
Thank you. I just came from there.
And what do we need to know?
Well, what you need to know is what the president, the vice president, the task force have been saying the last few days, which is that these new guidelines from the CDC will actually mitigate this health crisis for many and literally save lives. So we all can do our part by going to cdc.gov, coronavirus.gov, look at these guidelines. The president himself has tweeted them out. These are unprecedented times with this virus, and it calls for unprecedented action. But we also know about the resilience and the strength and the fortitude of the American people. We know that we're a strong, unified nation who will help the elderly who can't get out for meals, for example. The USDA just approved the delivery of about roughly 1 million meals a week to rural-based students. I talked to Secretary Sonny Perdue at the USDA, and he, in fact, has this new email, Feeding Kids at USDA.gov. That bill that the Senate will vote on today, that the House passed last week, does include billions of dollars for nutritional assistance for our vulnerable populations, pregnant women, with children at the poverty line, seniors, children. It also includes billions of dollars for vaccines and for paid family leave. So we can all do our best to mitigate the health consequences of this unprecedented virus, but our government is working together and with the private sector to help mitigate the economic devastation as well.
Kellyanne, you just teed up the Senate potentially acting today. Mitch McConnell a short time ago saying there will be a vote later today, we shall see, on paid leave and the unemployment insurance, the other stuff that the House had already passed. But the president has talked about dramatic relief to the airline industry as well, something in the neighborhood of $50 billion. How quickly do you think the president and the Congress working together can act on airline relief, a bigger package that Secretary Mnuchin's been talking about? As I understand it, the president just got off the phone with some airline CEOs. How did that go?
That's right. It did. And you'll recall, I think it was early last week or so, the president and the vice president also had the airline industry representatives here at the White House. Early on, the vice president went down to Miami to talk to the cruise line representatives. We keep on bringing these different private sectors here and now on the phone more and more because of social distancing policies. The president is ready to act. It really depends on Congress, but I know that they're working together very well. Secretary Mnuchin is in the lead with the Speaker and with Leader McConnell and others, and we want to make sure that we're bringing relief to those industries and, more importantly, those individuals whose economic wherewithal is being disrupted through no fault of their own because of this virus. The Secretary Mnuchin, the Secretary of the Treasury yesterday, broached the idea of checks going to individuals that will be means tested. So there's a whole bunch of economic relief packages being undertaken. We know that when we say whole of government, whole of America approach, that there are many tools at the president's disposal, but more importantly, many tools at the disposal of the president and the Congress working together.
Reading from the president's latest tweet here, Kellyanne, we will be by mutual consent temporarily closing our northern border with Canada to non-essential traffic. Trade will not be affected. Details to follow. That was the president 1 hour ago. How does he believe that will mitigate the spread of this virus?
For many of the same reasons the president took early action to close down the borders with China, for example, travel going both ways, and just last week with Europe, and then adding to that list the UK and Ireland more recently, making very clear that cargo would not be affected, trade and commerce would not be affected. We are trying to, this is not punitive, this is protection. And if we're asking Americans to change their behaviors, we also have to make sure that we are keeping ourselves protected and healthy here. That is a mutual agreement between Canada and the U.S. I know the president has been speaking with them. I know he early on reached out to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau about his wife, Sophie, who has been diagnosed with, I believe, diagnosed with COVID-19 or undergoing a test. And so we just continue. We want Americans to know that we're in this together, that we can all do our part to mitigate the damage as well. But and just listening to these briefings, you know, every cabinet agency has a role to play. I think FEMA is a very familiar federal government actor. if you will, organization to many Americans. They usually see FEMA get ready for weather events that are being predicted, for example, hurricanes and earthquakes. In this case, they see FEMA being prepared here. I think that we want Americans to understand to replace over-panic with over-preparedness.
Kellyanne.
Nobody should be upset if they're over-prepared or they overreact to this.
Kellyanne, we have to wrap here, but real quick, the president tweeted out that he's going to have a news conference. Does that mean he'll be there at 11:30 a.m. with the task force, or is he doing something else this afternoon?
So stay tuned. The task force will have its daily briefing today. As you know, for the last 4 consecutive days, the president has led off. He's been a part of that, and he's been there to take the questions also. And I think that transparency has been wonderful for the public's information. The president also is looking to speak separately as he wishes. He uses a social media platform all day long, but he is very engaged in wanting to speak directly to the public. I will end with this, too. We're very happy to report that the major networks and the cable stations, radio, have all donated time for public service announcements. I want to thank everybody out there for doing that. The vice president and I have taken the lead on that. Everyone has been tremendous. These are would-be competitors as collaborators so that we make sure we're getting that message to the American people all at once.
Hey, Kellyanne, real quick before you go, has the president been briefed on this 5.7 magnitude earthquake in Utah? The airport is shutting down. There's a ground stop right now, and the governor says that the coronavirus hotline is down. There's closures. They're assessing the damage.
He is being briefed, Sandra, and I learned about it as I came out of the Situation Room from the task force briefing, heard about it for the first time. We have no mobile devices in there. So obviously the president's being briefed. I know that we'll do what we need to do to help Utah through that crisis. And I would remind the people of Utah, even if your hotline is down, there are federal assets in place that you can access. You can go to the website. You can call the 188 number that FDA has set up, that FEMA has set up, that HHS has set up. There are other means if you need information.
All right, Kellyanne Conway at the White House. We'll see the president in a short time from now. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right,
Thanks, Sandra. Thanks, Ed.
Thank you. We are also watching Wall Street.